All right, so let's dive into something I think we all use every day, but maybe don't always think too much about time. I mean, have you ever really stopped to think like what time is?
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that we use every day, right?
Right.
But yeah. So today we're going to be taking a deep dive into this very question using this really fascinating YouTube video from History of the Universe. And it's really cool because it takes us on a journey through like history, philosophy, and even a bit of physics.
Yeah, it's really interesting how they start off. I mean, instead of just jumping straight into all the sciencey stuff,
Yeah.
they actually start with a historical figure, St. Augustine. And way back in the 5th century, he was kind of wrestling with these same questions about time.
Yeah.
They were still pondering, today.
Wow. Yeah, it's kind of humbling to realize that something so fundamental has puzzled brilliant minds, for centuries. So what was Augustine's take on time?
Well, the video describes him really struggling to even define it. He used these vivid images to try and grasp it, like picturing waves retreating from the shore instead of crashing onto it, or the sun rising in the west. It was kind of his way of imagining what a reversed flow of time might look like.
Oh, I love those images because it makes you think about how much our perception of time is deeply ingrained in us. So did he ever come up with a solid definition though?
He didn't, but what's remarkable is that he kind of intuitively sensed a connection between time and what we now call entropy. He saw time as this relentless force, inevitably pushing the world towards disorder, turning structure into chaos. And what's fascinating is that modern science actually kind of backs up this intuition.
This idea of things getting messier over time, is that what entropy is all about?
Exactly. Entropy is this fundamental concept in physics that describes this tendency of system to move from order to disorder. The video uses some really great examples to illustrate this. Think about a shiny new train locomotive that's like a low entropy system. Everything's organized and in its place. But then if that locomotive crashes, you get this mangled wreck, right?
Yeah.
That's a high entropy state.
I see what you mean. So the more disordered something is, the higher its entropy.
You got it. And the key takeaway here is that entropy always increases over time. It's like a universal rule. Whether it's train wreck, a burning log turning to ash, or even the gradual decay of a once grand building, the universe seems to be constantly moving towards greater.
Okay, so if entropy is always increasing and time is connected to this increase, does that mean time can only move forward?
That's the implication.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty mind-blowing one. It's what scientists call the arrow of time. It suggests that time has a direction, and that direction is dictated by the ever-increasing entropy of the universe.
So are we all just along for the ride then? No free will, no changing the course of history?
Well, it's a question that's puzzled philosophers and scientists for ages. This notion that time moves in one direction because of entropy does kind of challenge our intuitive sense of free will. But maybe our choices, our action, are just part of this complex unfolding of entropy itself.
Whoa, that's a pretty deep thought. I might need a minute to process that one. But while we're on the topic of time moving forward, what about the idea of time travel? Is that even possible in a universe ruled by entropy?
Time travel. Yeah. Who hasn't dreamt of hopping into a time machine and zipping back to the past or leaping into the future? The video tackles this head on. And guess what? It all comes back to entropy.
I have a feeling you're going to tell me that going back in time is a no-go.
You're catching on. Think about it. Traveling to the past would mean reversing entropy, somehow making the universe less disordered. And as we've discussed, that seems to be a fundamental no-no, according to the laws of physics. It would be like trying to unscramble an egg or unmixing cream from your coffee. It just doesn't happen naturally.
Okay, so no dinosaur encounters or rewriting historical blunders, I guess. But what about traveling to the future then? Is that off the table too?
Not necessarily. Remember, we're already traveling into the future
at
a rate of 1 second per second.
Yeah.
We're all time travelers.
Yeah.
Just moving at the standard pace.
True. But I was thinking more along the lines of fast forwarding, skipping ahead a few years or even decades. Is there any way to speed things up a bit?
Here's where it gets mind-bending. The video uses black holes as an example. You see, black holes have such incredibly intense gravity that they actually distort time itself.
Black holes, those cosmic vacuum cleaners that gobble up anything that gets too close. How do those tie into time travel?
Because of their immense gravitational pull. Black holes warp the fabric of space-time around. If you were to get close enough to a black hole, without falling in, of course, time would slow down for you relative to someone who is farther away.
So you're saying I could hang out near a black hole for a while, and when I come back, everyone else would have aged a lot more than me.
Exactly. It would be like taking a shortcut into the future. But keep in mind, this is all theoretical. We're still a long way from having the technology to pull off a black hole time travel stunt.
Right. Okay, so black holes might be our ticket to the future, but the past is firmly off limits thanks to entropy. Makes sense. But this brings up another question. If the arrow of time is all about increasing entropy, what about the very beginning of the universe? Wasn't the Big Bang, that moment of cosmic creation, a state of like super low entropy?
That's what you'd think, right? A tiny, incredibly dense point of pure energy. It was like the ultimate example of order. But the video actually throws a curveball here. Turns out the Big Bang wasn't as low entropy as we might imagine.
Wait, what? How can that be? It was everything packed into a single point.
The key here is that the early universe, while incredibly hot and dense, was also incredibly uniform. And it's that uniformity that actually points toward their entropy. A high level of entropy, you see there are far more ways to arrange particles uniformly than in a highly structured way.
So it's not just about how much stuff is crammed together, but how it's arranged. So the early universe was kind of like a perfectly mixed cosmic soup.
That's a great way to put it. And that perfectly mixed soup represents a surprisingly high entropy state. It's a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But it highlights how our understanding of entropy goes beyond just thinking about things being messy or disorganized.
Okay. So if the Big Bang wasn't this like ultra low entropy starting point, what is the biggest driver of entropy in the universe then? Where does all this disorder come from?
According to the video, the real entropy giants are black holes. Remember those cosmic vacuum cleaners we talked about?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it turns out they're not just gobbling up matter, they're also churning out entropy at an incredible rate.
Yeah. Black holes are entropy factories. But how?
Because so much matter is crammed into such an incredibly small space. There's a mind-boggling number of ways to arrange the particles within a black hole. And all those possible arrangements contribute massively to the overall entropy of the universe. They're like cosmic, messy rooms on a whole other level.
So as black holes feast and merge, they're actually pushing the arrow of time forward, driving the universe towards ever-increasing disorder.
That's the picture the video paints. And it's a pretty wild one. But it makes you wonder, what happens when that disorder reaches its peak? What happens when entropy wins?
That's a good question. What does a universe ruled by maximum entropy even look like? And what does that mean for time?
Well, that brings us to the concept of heat death. And it's not a very cheerful picture. Imagine a universe where everything is spread out, evenly distributed, and all energy is uniformly dispersed. No more stars, no more galaxies, just a vast, lukewarm cosmic soup.
That sounds weak. So time just stops in a heat death scenario.
In a sense, yes. In a state of maximum entropy, there would be no more potential for change, no more flow of energy from one place to another. Time, as we understand it, would lose its meaning because there would be nothing left to measure it against.
So it's not that time stops, but rather becomes irrelevant, kind of like a clock that's still ticking, but nobody's paying attention anymore.
That's a great way to put it. The arrow of time would have reached its destination, and there would be nowhere left to go.
This is getting heavy. So in a heat death scenario, the universe just ends.
Fades to black.
That's one way to think about it. But the video throws in another curveball. And this one is a real mind bender, the idea of eternal fluctuations. Even in a universe that has reached maximum entropy, there's still a possibility for random flux, for tiny pockets of order and disorder to pop up.
But I thought you said everything would be evenly distributed in heat death. What's left to fluctuate? Remember, even at maximum entropy, there are still countless ways to arrange the particles in the universe. It's like shuffling a deck of cards. Even if you shuffle them forever, you'll never get the exact same order twice.
Okay, so even in this dead, static universe, there's still a chance for things to rearrange themselves.
Exactly, and that's where things get truly bizarre, because these fluctuations can lead to some very unexpected outcomes. And that, my friend, brings us to the concept of the Boltzmann brain.
Boltzmann brain, that sounds ominous.
It's a wild thought experiment, one that really pushes the boundaries of what we think is possible.
Yeah.
And it has some pretty unsettling implications for our understanding of reality.
All right, you've piqued my curiosity. What in the world is a Boltzmann brain? And what does it have to do with a universe ruled by entropy? I think we need to save that conversation, though, for the next part of our deep dive. My brain needs a little time to catch up. All right, my brain's had a moment to reboot after that whole heat death revelation. So before we spiral into the existential dread of a timeless universe, let's tackle this Boltzmann brain thing. It sounds kind of spooky. What's the deal with these disembodied brains?
It is one of those ideas that's so out there, it almost makes you laugh.
Yeah.
But then it really makes you think. The Boltzmann brain thought experiment, it takes these random fluctuations that we're talking about and kind of pushes them to their most extreme conclusion.
Okay, walk me through it. How do you get a brain popping out of a random fluctuation in a dead universe?
Remember how we were saying that? Even in a universe where everything is spread out and entropy is maxed out, there's still a chance for particles to randomly clump together.
Yeah, like those tiny pockets of order and disorder popping up in the cosmic soup.
Exactly. Now imagine this. What if one of those random fluctuations, by pure chance, resulted in the exact arrangement of particles needed to form a fully functional human brain, compete with thought, memory, and even a sense of self?
Wait, so you're saying that instead of evolving over billions of years,
I'm sure.
as part of a complex universe, my brain could just materialize out of thin air.
That's the basic idea, and here's where it gets really weird, because there are so many more ways for particles to be arranged randomly than in a highly structured way. Statistically speaking, it's actually more likely for a Boltzmann brain to spontaneously pop into existence than for our universe to have evolved as it did.
Hold on, let me get this straight. You're saying that it's more likely for a lonely brain with made-up memories to randomly appear at a vast, empty universe than for us to be here, sitting in this studio, having this conversation.
As crazy as it sounds, that's the implication of the Boltzmann brain paradox. It suggests that our existence, with all its complexity and history, might be less likely than a random blip of consciousness in a dead universe.
This is seriously messing with my sense of reality. I mean, it's one thing to say that entropy drives the arrow of time, but to think that my brain might just be a statistical fluke, that's a whole level of mind-blowing.
Yeah, I know. It's a tough one to wrap your head around. But that's the power of thought experiments like this. They push us to the very edges of our understanding and make us question our assumption about the universe and our place in it.
So is that it? Are we doomed to be Boltzmann brains floating in a meaningless void? Is that the end of the story?
Well, the video doesn't leave us hanging there. Remember how we talked about the Big Bang potentially being a low entropy fluctuation from a prior timeless universe?
Yeah, that whole cosmic Russian doll scenario. My head's still spinning from that one.
Well, the video suggests that this idea might actually address the Boltzmann brain paradox.
Yeah.
Think about it. If our universe originated from a random fluctuation in a larger timeless universe, then our existence wouldn't be so improbable after all.
So instead of being a random blip in a dead universe, we're part of a much larger cyclical process of fluctuations and new universes being born.
Exactly. It's a pretty wild concept.
Yeah.
But it offers a way to reconcile the seemingly impossible odds of our existence with the idea of a universe where entropy ultimately reigns supreme.
Okay. I'm starting to see how it all fits together. Entropy drives the arrow of time, pushing the universe towards heat death. But even in that state of maximum entropy, random fluctuations can occur, potentially even giving rise to new universes. It's like a cosmic dance of creation and destruction, playing out on an unimaginable scale.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it highlights how our understanding of time is intimately linked to our understanding of entropy and the fundamental nature of the universe itself.
You know, it's funny. We started this deep dive talking about St. Augustine, a philosopher who lived over 1,500 years ago. And here we are discussing black holes, Boltzmann brains, and the possibility of multiple universes. It's incredible how our quest to understand time has led us to explore the most extreme and mind-boggling corners of science.
It's a testament to the power of human curiosity and our relentless drive to make sense of the world around us. And even though we might not have all the answers yet, the journey itself is incredibly rewarding.
Absolutely. And speaking of journey, this video takes a fascinating detour into how humans have tried to measure and control time. Throughout history, it's a reminder that our relationship with time isn't just about scientific concepts. It's also about how we experience and organize our lives.
Yeah, the video uses the example of the standardization of time in England during the Industrial Revolution. Before the mid-1800s, each town pretty much kept its own time based on local sundial. Can you imagine the chaos?
Yeah, I can't even keep track of time zones when I travel. I can only imagine trying to coordinate train schedules when every town had its own clock.
It was a logistical nightmare. The video points out that times could differ by up to 30 minutes between the east and west coasts of England. But with the rise of the railway system, this discrepancy became a huge problem.
So what did they do? Did they just shrug their shoulders and say, oh, that's time for you?
Not quite. In 1846, England made a bold decision. They standardized time across the entire country, aligning everyone with Greenwich Mean Time, set by the Royal Observatory in London.
So they literally made the whole country jump forward or backward in time just to make the trains run on schedule.
It was a radical move, but it highlights how our need to control time, to measure it and synchronize our lives around it, has shaped our technological progress and even our perception of reality.
It makes you wonder, though, is standard time just a human construct? I mean, the sun still rises and sets at different times in different places, regardless of what the clock says.
That's a great point. The video emphasized that standard time is ultimately an artificial concept, a way for us to organize our activities and create a sense of shared experience.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the fundamental nature of time itself, but it does reveal how deeply our human needs and desires shape our understanding.
It's fascinating how something we take for granted, like the time on our clocks, can reveal so much about our relationship with this elusive concept. But the video doesn't just explore our attempts to control time. It also delves into our attempt to understand its deeper nature. And that takes us on a journey through the history of thermodynamics.
Thermodynamics? This is a little heavy. What does that have to do with time?
It turns out that understanding how energy flows and transforms is crucial to grasping the concept of entropy, which, as we've discussed, is intimately linked to the arrow of time.
I've started to see the connection. So where do we begin this thermodynamic journey?
The video introduces us to A French engineer named Sadi Carnot, who was fascinated by steam engines back in the early 1800s. He made some key observations about how these engines converted heat into mechanical.
Steam engines. Those were the engines that powered the Industrial Revolution, right?
The very same. Carnot was intrigued by their efficiency, by how they could harness the power of heat to do useful work. And in 1824, he published a groundbreaking paper that laid out some of the fundamental principles of thermodynamics.
So what were Carnot's key insights? How did his work connect to our understanding of time?
One of his most important observations was that heat always flowed from a warmer body to a colder one. It seems simple, but this principle has profound implications for how energy behaves in these.
Okay, I can see how that makes sense, like a hot cup of coffee cooling down as it sits on your desk, or a fireplace warming up a room. Heat always seems to want to spread out, to even things out.
Exactly, and that's where entropy comes back into play. Carnot's work helped pave the way for the development of the second law of thermodynamics, which states that in a closed system, entropy always, in other words, energy always flows from a more concentrated state to a less concentrated state, leading to greater disorder over time.
So we've gone from Augustine's philosophical musings about time and disorder to a fundamental law of physics that governs how energy behaves throughout the universe.
It's an incredible journey, isn't it? And it highlights how interconnected everything is, from the smallest particles to the vast expanse of the cosmos. But how did scientists connect this idea of entropy, which is about energy, to the arrow of time, which is about the direction of time's flow?
That's where our old friend Sir Arthur Eddington comes in. Remember him? The astrophysicist who popularized the idea of the arrow of time.
Yeah, he's the one who said that. The increase in entropy is the arrow of time.
Precisely. Eddington argued that the reason time seems to flow in one direction, from past to future, is because entropy is constantly increasing. He saw entropy as the driving force behind time's arrow.
So just to recap, entropy always increases. And this increase dictates the direction of time, which means that time can only move forward, right?
That's the prevailing view in physics. It's why we can't unscramble an egg or remember the future. The past is fixed, a state of lower entropy, while the future holds more possibilities, more disorder, and therefore more entropy.
Okay, I think I'm finally getting a handle on this entropy thing, but this brings us back to time travel. If time can only move forward, how can we even entertain the idea of traveling to the past or the future?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the video doesn't shy away from tackling this apparent paradox.
Yeah.
It distinguishes between traveling to the past and traveling to the future because they present very different challenges.
Right, because going back in time would mean reversing the flow of entropy, making the universe less disordered, which seems to be a big no-no, according to the laws of physics.
Exactly. The video uses some great visuals to illustrate this point. Imagine waves uncrashing on the shore, or a pile of rubble spontaneously reassembling itself into a functioning machine. It would be like trying to rewind the universe to make it younger and more ordered. And as we've discussed, that goes against the fundamental nature of entropy.
It's like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube. Once it's out, there's no going back. But what about traveling to the future then? Is that a possibility?
Well, as the video points out, we're all technically traveling to the future right now at a rate of 1 second per second. We're all time travelers, just moving at the standard pace.
Yeah, true. But I was thinking more along the lines fast forwarding, you know?
Yeah.
Like skipping ahead a few years or even decades. Is there any way to speed up our journey into the future?
And that's where Einstein's theory of relativity comes into play. Remember how we talked about black holes distorting time due to their immense gravity?
Yeah. Those cosmic shortcuts.
Well, according to Einstein, gravity isn't the only thing that can warp time. Velocity can too. The faster you travel, the slower time passes for you, relative to someone who is stationary.
So if I hop on a really fast spaceship, zoom around the galaxy for a while, I'll come back younger than everyone I left behind.
That's the idea. It's like taking a time dilation joyride. Of course, we're still a long way from having spaceships that can travel at speeds that would result in the significant time dilation. But the principle is sound.
Okay, so time travel to the past might be out of the question, thanks to entropy.
Yeah.
But traveling to the future, at least in theory, seems to be within the realm of possibility. But what about this whole heat death scenario we were talking about earlier? What happens to time when the universe reaches maximum entropy?
Well, as we discussed, in a state of heat death, everything would be spread out. Energy would be evenly distributed, and there'd be no more potential for change. The arrow of time would essentially lose its meaning.
So it's not that time stops, but rather that it becomes irrelevant, like a clock that's still ticking, but the hands have stopped moving.
That's a great analogy. In a state of heat death, the universe would reach a state of equilibrium, a sort of timeless eternity where nothing really happens.
It's a strange and somewhat unsettling concept to imagine a universe where time has lost its meaning, where everything is frozen in a state of eternal stillness.
It certainly challenges our intuitive understanding of time.
Yeah.
As something that's always moving forward,
yeah,
always progressing. But the video reminds us that even in this seemingly bleak scenario, there's still room for surprise, for the unexpected to emerge from the seemingly unchanging void.
Huh.
And that brings us back to those eternal fluctuations we were discussing earlier.
Right. These tiny pockets of order and disorder that can pop up even in a universe that has reached a maximum entropy. And of course,
those fluctuations are what give rise to the possibility of Boltzmann brains.
Exactly. Even in a seemingly dead universe, the dance of entropy and random fluctuations continues. And as we'll explore, the next part of our deep dive, those fluctuations might hold the key to understanding not only the nature of time, but also the ultimate fate of our universe, and perhaps even the possibility of other universes beyond our own. Okay, I'm ready for another brain twist. Bring on the Boltzmann brains.
Okay, Boltzmann brains. We left off with this idea that in a universe where everything is spread out and time has lost its meaning, random fluctuations can still happen, and those fluctuations can, in theory, lead to some pretty strange outcomes.
Yeah.
Like a disembodied brain popping into existence.
Yeah.
Complete with memories and thoughts. It's like something out of a science fiction novel.
It's definitely one of the more bizarre concepts in physics, but that's what makes it so fascinating. The Boltzmann brain thought experiment really highlights the paradoxical nature of a timeless, fluctuating universe. On the one hand, you have this tendency towards disorder, towards everything spreading out and becoming uniform. But on the other hand, you have these random fluctuations that can create pockets of order, however fleeting they may be.
So it's like a cosmic tug of war between order and disorder. And even in a universe where disorder has seemingly won, there's still a chance for these little bursts of complexity to emerge. Exactly. And what the Boltzmann brain paradox points out is that, statistically speaking, it's more likely for a simple structure, like a lone brain, to randomly assemble itself from a fluctuation than for a vastly more complex structure, like our entire universe, to have evolved as it did.
Okay. I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. Why is a random brain more likely than a whole universe? It seems counterintuitive.
Think about it this way. There are many more ways to arrange particles randomly than there are to arrange them.
Yeah.
In a highly ordered, complex structure, like a universe with galaxies, stars, planets, and life. So in a timeless universe, where random fluctuations are the only game in town, the odds favor simplicity over complexity.
So our existence, with all its intricate beauty and history, might actually be less likely than a random brain with made-up memory floating in a void. It's a pretty humbling thought.
It is, but it also raises some profound questions about the nature of our reality. If our universe is less likely than a Boltzmann brain, does that mean our existence is just a cosmic fluke, or is there something more to the story?
I'm really hoping there's more to the story. This whole Boltzmann brain thing is starting to give me an existential crisis.
Well, I'm happy to report that the video doesn't leave us stranded in this existential abyss. I remember how we talked about the Big Bang potentially being a low entropy fluctuation from a prior timeless universe?
Yeah. The cosmic Russian doll scenario, that one's still blowing my mind.
Well, the video suggests that this idea might actually provide a solution to the Boltzmann brain paradox. Think about it. If our universe is just one of many fluctuations that have emerged from a larger timeless multiverse, then the odds of our existence become a lot more plausible.
So instead of being a freak occurrence in a dead universe, we're part of a much grander cyclical process of creation and destruction.
That's the idea. It suggests that our Big Bang wasn't the ultimate beginning, but rather a transition, a cosmic hiccup. In an eternal dance of entropy and fluctuations.
Okay, that's a much more comforting thought than being a lonely brain in a void. But it also raises even more questions. If our universe is just one fluctuation among many, what about those other universes? What are they like? Do they have different laws of physics? Could there be other versions of ourselves out there living different lives?
Those are questions that scientists are still grappling with. The idea of a multiverse is still very speculative, but it's a fascinating area of exploration in cosmology. And it really stretches our imaginations about what's possible.
This whole deep dive has been one mind-blowing revelation after another. We've gone from St. Augustine's musings about time, black entropy, heat, Boltzmann brains, and now a potential multiverse. It's enough to make your head spin.
It has been quite a journey, but I think it highlights how interconnected all these concepts are. Our quest to understand time has led us to explore the most fundamental aspects of the universe, from the laws of physics to the very nature of reality itself.
And through it all, we've seen how entropy, this relentless force towards disorder, plays a central role. It drives the arrow of time, pushes the universe towards heat death, and yet also provides the seeds for new creation through those random fluctuations. It's like a cosmic dance of destruction and creation, playing out on an unimaginable scale.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And I think it's important to remember that even though these concepts can seem abstract and even a little unsettling, they're ultimately about understanding our place in the grand scheme of things.
So where do we go from here? What's the takeaway message for our listeners?
Well, I think the video encourages us to embrace the mystery, to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers when it comes to time and the universe, but it also reminds us that the journey of exploration is just as important as the destination.
Absolutely. And who knows what incredible discoveries await us as we continue to probe the depths of space and time. Perhaps one day we'll even unlock the secrets of time travel or make contact with those other universes out there. Until then, we can marvel at the wonders we've already uncovered and keep asking those big, mind-bending questions.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
The universe is a vast and wondrous place, full of mysteries waiting to be unraveled.
Well, I think we've given our listeners plenty to ponder for today. If you're still with us, after that whirlwind tour of the cosmos, we applaud your curiosity, willingness to dive deep into the mysteries of time. And if you're eager to learn more, be sure to check out the History of the Universe YouTube channel.
It's a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to explore the big questions about our universe.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and those imaginations soaring.